Afternoon, everyone. So, right into it. Lovely sunny evening. It's cold, and I feel like explaining the placebo effect. Simple explanation, really. So the nervous system has two modes, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Most people know this nowadays because trauma resolution is very trending and necessarily so, good that it's in vogue. And the fact is, the sympathetic survival, fight or flight or freeze, and nowadays even fawn, where you worship and adore the source of your pain or your fear. These states, and these include of course the lower emotions, these will constrict blood flow to the higher brain and to the organs. So the opposite is the parasympathetic, which deeply irrigates the higher brain and all the organs for rest, digest, repair, regeneration. The immune system kicks up into a far higher rate of efficiency. Everything, your circulation system dilates and exchanges gases through a much larger surface area, as the lumen, the space inside the arteries and the veins, is much larger. Nitric oxide is produced. Basically, rest and recovery are not just half of the coin, it's more like 3/4 of the coin. And nowadays, instead of being activated into survival and fighting and climbing and chasing and escaping, just 5 or 10% of the time, the way we would have been in nature, or maybe 1/4 of the time for a man, 1/4 of your waking time probably. Nowadays, it's because of the mental emotional aspect, we're processing so much more information and feeling so much more fickle, frivolous, fleeting, and the volatility of our conscious experience. Some people manage to stay in the survival state through the negative, fearful thoughts and emotional states most of the time. So the result is we don't have access to our higher faculties mentally, and all sorts of chronic illnesses develop, including cancer especially. And the placebo effect is key in cancer, and it's been proven in lots of studies where the person who believes that they've gotten the life-changing treatment, whether it's an operation or a product they've ingested, or even just the good news, it completely changes the state of their body. The truth that they are promised materializes in response to the good news. So that was all very brief and over the top of it, but the fundamental fact of the placebo effect is the gratitude and the joy and the celebration almost, and new lust for life, and turning the page into a new life chapter. That internal process of belief, and actually the word faith, there's no better word than faith, really. It's synonymous of power and abundance and freedom and good news. So the manifesting community and the fifth dimension nowadays are very in touch with this. Basically, you have the right to be in the state that you would be if you already had the outcome that you would like. On the way there, you have the right to already enjoy and celebrate, and feel it to be it, feel it to see it, become it. All these phrases, and Neville Goddard's living in the end desired, and as if, living as if, and fake it till you make it. All of these are embodiment. So I really recommend you look into Neville Goddard if you haven't heard of it. It's the fundamentals of the foundation a century ago of the law of attraction. And The Secret was a big docu-film 20 years ago, 2006. So the placebo effect requires us to enter a state of calm deliberately and practice that. And for some people it's extremely difficult. The more trauma you have, the more unstable circumstances in your childhood or early adulthood even, the more tension can be built in and higher production of cortisol and adrenaline, simply as part of your character and your personality and your body's culture, tradition, so to speak. It can all be reversed. Remember, we are 70-80% water, highly plastic, changing shape in real time. Even the largest bone in our body is replaced every 5 or 6 years. Goes from the hip to the knee, the femur, and that's solid as rock. That's why it takes so long. But you've got cells and tissues in your body that regenerate in a matter of days and weeks, most of them. Like, very few tissues take longer than a few weeks to completely replace in your body. And yeah, we're water, so remember that. And yeah, so the main source of nervous system stress and tension nowadays is the wounded digestive system. Our second brain, which is larger supposedly than our main brain, all these different figures, it just exceeds in number. 80% of our dopamine and serotonin are produced down in the abdomen. The very fuels that make synapses interact, the brain connections, are produced down in our abdomen. And dopamine and oxytocin, and yeah, our gut flora produces and fills our reserves, both our neurological neurotransmitters and our endocrine, our hormones. And if your bacterial flora is balanced and healthy, receiving plenty of live plant foods, raw or uncooked should be a part of, but mostly much more plants than animal products. And you're practicing food combining, which is very important. It's not complicated. You don't need to read a whole book about it. You just need to know lunch is the carb meal and dinner is the fat and protein meal, and not every day dinner. You shouldn't be eating as many fats and proteins as you're eating carbs, because they're much more intensive and energy consuming digestion than carbs are. Now we're talking about slow carbs, obviously. Lentils, legumes, potatoes, more often than rice, pasta, bread, or high temperature heated. And also, don't combine dairy. Don't eat dairy on the same day. Eat very little dairy anyways, but don't eat dairy on the same day as you have meat, fish, or seafood, because it neutralizes the stomach acids that are very important for digesting and absorbing, so you can assimilate the very rich nutritional value of animal products, meat, fish, and seafood. What else? Eat fruit alone. And so the digestive health is three-pronged. It's a tripod with 3 pillars. The second is slow carb only, and the third is flexitarian or vegan. If you eat the slow carb flexitarian diet and practice food combining, in 90% of your meals, your gut inflammation will be flatlined. It'll just completely rock bottom, and you'll have a completely different life quality. Because the fact is, when we have an inflamed and wounded gut tract, especially the lower digestive tract, where until very recently, a few decades ago in history, never did as many starches and sugars and carbohydrates reach that far down, because nature never combines in one food fat and carbohydrates together. You never had starches or sugars with fats. It's extremely rare. And a stomach full of fat, protein, carbohydrate and fiber takes hours to digest, first of all, and doesn't actually leave the stomach and go into the digestive tract until 3, 4 or 5 hours after you ate it. Whereas carbohydrates want in and out in an hour. And fruit will actually leave your stomach within 15 or 20 minutes of you eating it. The faster the sugars, the more briefly they spend time in the stomach, and the slower, like dark legumes, lentils, potatoes, might take up to an hour, even an hour and a half, depending on how they're cooked. So another great advantage of food combining is, and the slow carb flexitarian diet, is that you have a lot less gut fungus. The candidiasis disaster, that is the 20th and 21st century, has caused enormous brain fog. And I've had clients tell me that at 7 in the morning they're now clearer, and this was in the 3rd week, not even at the end of the 4-week course, than they had been for years at midday. And this is mainly because of the gut fungus. When you, my 1-month protocol is especially designed for healing and repairing the digestive system, but especially for dissolving, eliminating, and expelling all unwanted bacteria, excessive fungus, and even parasites. And so, yes, a gut fungus cleanse through the keto diet, eating lots of raw onion and lemon. Lemon in the morning squeezed with water, 50-50 water lemon. The entire lemon, actually, just peeling off the thin zest layer, the 1 millimeter thin yellow layer, which a little bit of which you can even put in if you want, but it's extremely potent. Then there's antifungal foods that you can eat, especially antifungal, like extracts and tinctures, but that shouldn't really be necessary if you do this repeatedly a few times a year. 10 or 15 or 20 days of ketogenic diet with a raw onion every day, a raw lemon every day, garlic, lots of curries and Thai and Indian cuisine. And yeah, the nuts and seeds involved in the ketogenic diet will help to mechanically scrape clean your gut. But yeah, so we're talking about the placebo effect and calming the nervous system into the parasympathetic. And this, first of all, at the very foundation, is the greatest wound at our core that all of modern civilization has. And that is the wounded digestive tract. Fungus perforates the gut lining deeply and causes exchange of your very sewage and your blood with each other, inflaming the nervous system, overactivating the immune system, eventually over time, over the course of years, exhausting and depleting your immune system. This causes massive endocrine imbalance, resulting in the reproductive disorders for women, who nowadays, I gather, 50% of women under 35 years of age have one or more of the reproductive disorders, the common myomas, fibroids, endometriosis, heavy periods. So, and mental health, performance in sports, academically, professionally, artistically, musically, and yeah. So that's the first video on the parasympathetic. Obviously, there are so many more dimensions and aspects to it, but that was a good start. Yeah, thanks for your time, and this is probably going to become a series explaining the placebo effect. Take care.